Good morning, Burbank. You're listening to Go Chuck Yourself, the #1 radio show in the Burbank area, talking about one very special resident, Chuck Bartowski. Chuck, if you're listening on your way to work, how's it going? We're all watching you. We all know your truth. My name is DJ Crazy Chris here, and I'm joined as always by DJ. What is your name? That is, I forget.
I really want to call myself The Rock, but I think that one's taken. I'm DJ Erin Roarin Rapids Arata.
Wow, DJ Erin Roarin Rapids Arata here at the Burbank Morning Show. Chuck, once again, we all know that you're a spy. We all know that you have feelings for Sarah.
I really want to make like talk radio like sound effects, but I don't listen to talk radio very much, so I just know that there are sound effects, and the only one I can think of is like a fart sound. So I'm thinking about dropping that in at some point.
Well, I can drop one in right here for you. Here we go. There it is. You like that?
That was great. Perfect.
How about these other sounds? We should just change the name of the show to Zoo Radio Yourself. Zoo FM. I don't know. Morning Zoo. That's what they call it. Morning Zoo.
Oh, okay.
Anyhow, you're listening to Go Chuck Yourself. This is a podcast, not a morning radio show. My name is Chris Gillespie.
My name is Erin Arata, but the Roarin Rapids still applies.
I can't believe you chose such a tongue twister for your name. In this episode, we are talking about the television show Chuck, specifically the episode Chuck versus the Final Exam. It is episode 11 of season 3, #season of Erin. And it is an episode. We're going to talk about it in just a second, but there's some other stuff going on in the Chuckiverse that I would like to bring to your attention first.
Yes, very important stuff.
Very important. Maybe you haven't seen it, maybe you have. But if you haven't, we have tweeted these things from @GoChuckPodcast. We try to keep you abreast of all that's happening and fun Chuck-related things. I wanted to give a shout out to Patrick, whose handle is @Pat355. He tweeted the other day @Zachary Levi. He said, "My 14-and-a-half-year-old Border Collie is a huge fan of Chuck. When he is feeling down, we put on an episode of Chuck to cheer him up. He is a lifelong fan. His name is Casey. He will watch an entire episode straight through like this." We did retweet that. If you haven't seen it, it is adorable.
Adorable.
Maybe the cutest thing that I've ever seen. It's just a dog intently watching an episode of Chuck.
And Border Collies are like sheepdogs, and so they're very intent on things. They're very intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
And an intelligent dog likes Chuck. What more do you need to know? It's a good show.
I have so many questions. Does Casey have a favorite episode? Does he have a favorite character? I don't know, Pat, if you're listening and you want to come on and we can do a brief interview. I don't know if Casey's available for interviews. We would be happy to have you. I think everyone has a lot of questions. Yeah.
Yes.
How does Casey feel about Shaw? How does he feel about Sarah? Just so many questions. I can't imagine what goes on in dogs' brains, you know?
Well, there's a couple films that might answer this question. There's an episode of The Rugrats that might answer this question. Okay. Does he see Chuck in black and white?
Maybe.
That's an important question.
Mm-hmm. Does he? He can't. Does he understand what's going on? Maybe, right? Maybe he doesn't. What does he think's happening? Why does he like it?
Does he get freaked out when Chuck flashes?
There's so many explosions. Yeah, does he get freaked out when he flashes? I don't know. But you trained him well, Patrick. I'm glad that your dog is a fan of Chuck, and I will always look at this photo when I need to be cheered up. I also would like to give a shout out to SG Nelson, Twitter handle Thesaurus Addict, who tweeted at Zachary Levi the other day and came across my my desk, but she built a puppet of Chuck Bartowski. Did you see this?
I don't think I saw that.
I think it is being referred to colloquially as the Chuppet, which is of course a combination of Chuck and puppet.
Yes.
It is on our.
All right, hold on. I'm looking now.
It's the likeliness of this puppet does look a lot like Chuck.
Oh my god, it does.
He's got a Tron poster. He's ready to go to work. He's dressed like he's a Nerd Herd associate.
That's amazing.
That's really impressive.
I mean, it should go in someone else's bedroom space, but I would be happy to have one of those in my room.
But So you would like to own one, but you just wouldn't want it to watch you sleep, basically?
Yes. But also, like, what I meant was I feel like its true home is with one of the cast or creators of Chuck or the cast or creator of the Trumpet.
Mhm.
But if there was like another one, if they were ever mass produced, yes, it could come in my room. Probably no, I don't want it to watch me sleep. But, you know, if that's the price I have to pay for having a Trumpet, I'll pay it.
We haven't really seen Chuck's bedroom a lot in season 3, have we? I feel like we used to be in it a lot.
We mainly see like the living room.
Yeah. Did they get rid of his bedroom?
Maybe that's one of the things they had to downsize.
That sucks. He's just crashing on the couch now. We absolutely have never seen Morgan's bedroom, even though they live together.
No, I would I don't really want to see Morgan's bedroom, but I'm like kind of morbidly curious about it.
Mm-hmm. I guess we did see it when he slept with Karina.
That's true. Well, we did see it. We also saw it the night that this was his old bedroom, but the night that Big Mike and Morgan's mom were having some fun together, we did see Morgan able to hear that through the walls.
True. Yes, Bologna. So, we haven't seen Bologna either. Yeah. So many.
I know. We miss Bologna.
It's been a good season, but the heart wants what it wants, as Big Mike would say.
Yes. Do you know something really interesting? I've been reading up on like reviews of this season, and people when they write Big Mike's name, they'll put like big in quotation marks as if big is the nickname. So it's just like Big Mike. But I feel like that's not how I've understood his name up to this point.
No, because if it was just in quotes, if his nickname was Big, then people would be like, hey, Big, what's going on? But you really need the Big Mike. But Big Mike, actually, he features pretty prominently in this episode, Chuck versus the Final Exam, and it was a delight.
It was great. He was looking great, and I guess we'll get more onto what exactly made him look so great.
Yes.
I wanted to chime in with one quick news on my part. This is Erin's family reacts to her having a podcast corner.
Ooh, okay. I'm going to brace myself. I'm gripping the side of my desk.
It's a short story. My aunt texted me last night, and she said, "Hi, what is your TED Talk?" And I was very confused. I texted my mom, and genuinely what I thought was, oh, maybe this is like a fun quarantine, like chain letter exercise where she's like, what would your TED Talk be on? What are you most interested in? And I was kind of excited to answer because I was like, there's a lot of subjects I'd love to give a TED Talk on. And then I asked my mom, and she was like, I think she means your podcast. And I was like, oh, so my aunt may be a listener. And if Aunt Sharon, if you're listening to this episode, it was a delightful mistake. I'm not making fun of you in any way. It made my night. And I think if more people treated podcasts as if they were TED Talks, maybe podcasts would get a little bit more respect in this world.
Yes,
right, Chris?
That's such a major problem, is that podcasts need to have
we
more
deserve respect.
No.
We deserve just as much respect as a neurosurgeon talking about how music affects the brain.
Yeah. I maybe you need to have a TED Talk about why podcasts deserve more respect. I think that seems to be
I'll work on that.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. I'll definitely watch that. I just did air quotes like someone would be able to see it, but no one could see it.
I can't wait for speech teachers at colleges around the nation to show my speech, my TED Talk.
And all the students to fall asleep in the middle of it and be like, why did we watch that?
Yep, exactly. So speaking of college speech classes and just college in general, exams, final exams, this is Chuck versus the final exam. And we are going to get into this is kind of like our exam on the content of this episode. Is it verbal exam?
Yeah.
Is that what they're called?
Yeah,
I never had to do one.
Like an oral exam, yeah.
Yeah, oral. That's the word I was looking for. You can tell how cool I am.
Erin knows a lot about oral, folks. Sorry,
I don't.
Sorry, Aunt Sharon. That's No, I didn't mean it the way that you think. Erin doesn't know anything about that. I don't know why I know that, but she doesn't know anything.
Thank you. I think
my TED Talk will be about why Erin doesn't know anything about oral, but not the way that you're thinking.
Okay, so if you're listening to either of our TED Talks, that's great. Thank you for listening. But now you're going to be listening to our podcast, which does deserve more respect. So this episode, Chuck versus the final exam, I started it thinking, I've seen this before. And then I realized I have actually seen the show before. So I have actually seen this before. The episode starts in a rail yard where a man who I thought was Matthew Perry, but is actually Kyle Bornheimer playing a character named Hunter Perry, is being chased. He trips and falls and says, "Don't shoot," and we pan out to see that Chuck is the one chasing him, and he's holding a gun. Hunter Perry tells Chuck not to kill him because that's what they want him to do, but we see Chuck's finger on the trigger. We cut to black, and then we hear a gunshot. Chuck maybe shot someone. That's crazy. Immediately, we're in the Bymore, where Lester and Jeff are engaged in some kind of Nerf battle. We find out that this happened 3 days earlier. Jeff chases Lester directly into a customer before shooting him in a clear parallel to Chuck's scene in the opening. They're interrupted by Casey, who tells them off for behaving dangerously in the store. He honestly has a point. They, knock somebody over.
Mm-hmm.
They probably shouldn't be doing this. Lester taunts Casey, saying he can act like a military tough guy, but he's just a schmuck like them. Casey responds by slamming Lester and Jeff's skulls together, knocking them to the floor. It was nice to see. I mean, I don't condone violence, but it was nice to see, conking some heads.
Well, Casey's probably very upset. This kind of hits too close to home because now he is just working at the Bymore because Beckman fired him and turned him into a civilian.
Yes. Chuck rushes over to stop Casey from inflicting further damage and says they have to get Casey reinstated before he actually kills someone. We also get a line where Casey says baby steps, and Chuck says, more like baby kicks to the groin, which is so clunky and weird, but I loved it. Chuck says he's going to tell Beckman that he'll quit unless Casey is reinstated. Casey says he made his bed and now he has to lie in it, which is fair, except why is Casey still working at the Bymore? I guess the job market is really tough, but, he has experience. I feel like he could get a job as, a bodyguard or, a bouncer or something.
Yeah.
He might have to, though, because he's immediately called into Big Mike's office. Big Mike, quotes around the big, asks Casey if he's planning to be at the Bymore for the long haul, and Casey says he doesn't have a better plan, so I guess that's our explanation. Big Mike tells Casey he can't be conking heads in the Bymore, and we pan out to see Jeff and Lester are also in the room. They threaten to sue Casey, but he doesn't take them seriously. Apparently he's written, "I am going to kill you" on his hand, which I really liked. When Jeff and Lester rush out, Big Mike says that Jeff and Lester weren't kidding about the lawsuit and Casey really needs to shape up. Meanwhile, Chuck drops by Castle, where Sarah and Shaw have just returned from their weekend trip to DC. Chuck asks what they did there, pointing out he has no idea what Shaw does for fun. We don't really get an answer, so I'm going to pose it to you now. What do you think Shaw does for fun?
Well, he's obviously very physically fit, so that he's probably really into exercising. That probably takes up a lot of his time. He's probably someone who goes to the gym a lot, finds a lot of purpose doing that. Maybe he went for a run around the National Mall, saw the sights, and was having a little bit of time doing that. He seems like he's pretty smart as well. He seems to be an intellectual, so he probably hit up some of the museums. And he obviously enjoys the finer things in life, so they probably hit up some of Washington, D.C.'s many fine dining establishments.
Is this a commercial for DC?
Washington, D.C.
Do you think he got the freeze-dried ice cream from the Aerospace Museum?
He doesn't really seem like someone who would put up with that. He'd probably feel like it's disrespectful towards people in the NASA or the astronauts that it's like that. He'd be like, "This ice cream is for the astronauts. We need to save it for them." Be like, okay, that doesn't really make sense, but I guess that's pretty self-righteous of you.
A true American hero.
He is.
Sarah tells Chuck they were in meetings discussing Chuck's future, and we find out what exactly that means when Beckman appears on the screen and says they're sending Chuck on another solo mission that will act as his final spy test. If he fails, he'll go back to civilian life, but if he passes, he'll be sent to Rome as a full-time spy. But he'll go alone while Sarah and Shaw go to DC. This honestly feels like a win-win for Chuck, considering what we've seen from him so far in previous seasons, but the only issue is that Chuck's concerned that Sarah's being sent somewhere else, because, he loves her. So I guess, it's not a win-win for him. It seems like the thing that should happen if he fails is that he'll, get sent to live in a bunker, because that was always the threat. I don't know why that threat went away.
Yeah.
Because that's, a little bit more incentive on him to pass the test. If he just gets to go back to his normal life, he wanted that before, so.
Yeah, he's very excited about potentially getting the job in Rome.
Yeah.
And because his cover is going to be a millionaire industrialist, and he's going to live in a villa.
That sounds pretty fun, to be honest.
That sounds pretty fun, but I also found myself wondering, you're still going away from your friends and family for no reason. So it's almost like you're going to be in a bunker, but just a really nice bunker. So yeah, I don't know. It kind of seems strange, but overall, Chuck is very excited about this, and it does seem to be a win-win in his mind.
It's a good opportunity. So the next morning, Chuck wakes up, and Sarah is in his kitchen. She gives him an envelope with a portable DVD player in it. I totally forgot those existed.
Such a big deal.
I know.
It's so silly now, but it was like, I can watch DVDs on the go.
Yeah!
Yes, I can watch a DVD on an airplane.
So she tells him this is how real spies get their missions in the field, and then sits back to observe and take notes on what he does. Despite feeling weird about her note-taking, Chuck gets his mission from the DVD player. Beckman says he has to stake out a hotel where a Russian spy is meeting with a CIA mole or an NSA mole. I don't really know. He's a mole. That's all you need to know. Chuck has to figure out who the mole is and presumably, get a look at his face. Chuck tries to talk back to Beckman, but Sarah points out that it's a recording because it is like a portable DVD player. Then the DVD blows up, just like Mission Impossible, which I watched the other day. It was pretty good.
Oh, did you watch the Mission Impossible before you watched Chuck, and then you saw the exploding thing, and you're like, it's that again?
I was like, when I was watching Mission Impossible, I was like, right, from Chuck.
Yeah. They borrowed that from Chuck.
Yeah. So Chuck points out that this is going to be his and Sarah's last mission together. He's pretty wistful about it. Sarah is less so, but I think she's putting on a brave face. Mm-hmm. She's probably pretty sad.
And now I have to interject with a signature declassified scene provided by the box set of Chuck.
The fine folks at Chuck.
The fine folks I was using my portable DVD player to watch this declassified scene. I was not. I do not know where my portable DVD player is.
I was going to ask.
You know how cool I was as a teenager, as a youth, as a 12-year-old, 13-year-old? I was able to find a way to hook up my PlayStation 2 to a portable DVD player. So on road trips in the car, I would be able to play PlayStation 2 in the car.
That's really embarrassing. And also kind of cool. I think we're going to be able to tell a lot about our listeners by whether they think that's embarrassing or whether they think that's cool.
Well, so I got the idea for this after I was playing GameCube in the car with a portable screen that I could attach to my GameCube, and you could play GameCube on the go in your car with this screen that would attach to it. So then I was like, I want to do that on my PlayStation 2. So then I was able to hook up my portable DVD player to that. Isn't that absurd? Isn't that ridiculous?
It's a lot of, because considering now we have things like the Switch, it just is insane to me that you would have to connect one thing to another thing to mimic a third thing. And then you probably had to connect a controller to the DVD player. So that's like a third thing.
Yeah.
That's wild.
And then that will plug into the cigarette lighter in a car. Anyway, this is irrelevant. The declassified scene that I want to talk about is Sarah leaves the apartment plaza after talking to Chuck. Casey exits his apartment at the same time, dressed for work, and sees her walking away. We hear someone saying, Om, Om, over and over again. And Casey hears it too, and he walks around a corner and sees Devin meditating on a yoga mat. As Casey approaches, Devin opens his eyes and says, don't. Casey asks what Devin's talking about, but Devin says, don't make a crack about my meditating. I need to get zen, bro, stat. Turns out that Devin has turned to meditation to alleviate the stress he has about living next to Casey and Chuck. Devin then adds that he's been so wound up about all the spy stuff and keeping secrets from Ellie that he, quote, almost took Ellie's head off while watching Top Chef the night before, which made me laugh really hard because
What do you think he did?
I don't know. Catherine and I are also watching Top Chef now. I'm like, was he upset because they had something happened in the show that he was upset about, or do they have a disagreement?
Were they trying to mimic the chefs, and so he had a bunch of knives?
I don't know. Something sent him off the rails. Casey asks what Top Chef is, and Devin says, quote, it's something that shouldn't cause marital discord. Devin then says that Chuck is always telling him that he should feel safe, but he just doesn't. He then asks Casey if he should feel safe, and Casey says, yes. Devin thinks about it for a moment and then says, nope, I still don't feel safe, and then returns to meditating, and Casey walks off to go to work.
I like that.
Well, good, because there's a lot more Devin that was cut out of this episode that I will be sharing throughout the course of
Devin.
our recap.
Back in the Bymore, Big Mike has made it his mission to get Casey to change. Apparently that entails introducing Casey to a tailor named Clarence, who is going to, I guess, make Casey a suit. Casey is dubious about how this will change him as a person, but Big Mike insists. We move on to the hotel stakeout that night, where Chuck is looking good, if I do say so myself. Sarah enters and compliments him on his setup, which prompts Chuck to bring out one final briefcase packed with sizzling shrimp,
Aww.
champagne, and a classic iPod, which I feel like I expected you to say about that part, but
I can't tell if Chuck is trying to come on to Sarah with the suitcase or he's trying to come on to me. Because either way, I think it's working.
He pours them both champagne, and we see Sarah looking a little surprised and dubious. Of course, Chuck isn't supposed to be drinking on a mission, which is something Chuck seems never to have learned. He also puts on music and tries to strike up a nostalgic conversation about their first stakeout in the sizzling shrimp episode. He says, "You know you're going to miss me in DC, right?" Which is honestly a little aggressive and entitled for Chuck, and I kind of wish he had worded that differently, but Sarah is just kind of reacts sadly. Chuck asks Sarah if she and Shaw will be living together in DC, and she says, "It's different," which isn't, I mean, that's not really like an answer to that question, but that's fine. He asks, "Different than what?" And she says, "Than with you." Chris is making a face.
Well, it goes from being like a very awkward date to being like a really nice date all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And like the awkward date felt like the acting was so good in that because I was like, yep, I recognize this. This feels like many dates that I've been on personally. But none have turned around so well as Chuck's date goes.
I didn't expect to go back to the home theater room tonight, but I guess we're there.
Yep, so
Chris
many
talking about his failures in dating. Before Chuck can say anything else, his phone rings and he pauses the music. Shaw demands to know why Chuck hasn't put in his earpiece yet, so Chuck pops that in. But once Shaw's off the line, Chuck just goes right back to trying to talk to Sarah. While she does her actual job and keeps an eye on the hotel, Chuck pours out his heart, saying he's been wondering about his decision in Prague, and if he passes this test and becomes a real spy, they won't have to choose between the job and their relationship. They can be together. Sarah apparently buys into all of this because Chuck leans in to kiss her, and she starts leaning in too, which was pretty exciting. Like, they haven't kissed in a little while.
Shaw interrupts and says that Anatoly's credit card was just used at the hotel spa and asks how Chuck missed him. Shaw tells Chuck to get ready to go into the hotel and instructs Sarah to give Chuck a pair of eyeglasses that will upload everything Chuck sees to Castle's security feed, which Shaw happens to be monitoring. Shaw reminds Chuck of the stakes one more time, but we also see that Chuck and Sarah's potential relationship is riding on this mission as well. Chuck puts on the glasses and says to Sarah, "This isn't over." Or, in the words of Chris Daughtry on his multi-platinum hit, "It's not over."
It's a good song.
Chuck enters the spa portion of the hotel and speaks to the clerk at the front desk. Chuck tells the clerk that he's looking for his Russian friend, who he goes to spas with. And the clerk is unfazed by this and says that he believed the party just checked in, and Chuck will have to pay the daily fee of $100 to enter. And Chuck's all flustered. Chuck asks Shaw through his watch if he can expense the fee, and Shaw says, "Pay it, Chuck."
That was a pretty good Shaw.
I know $100 is nothing to sneer at, but the CIA has compensated Chuck enough, right, for him to be able to take $100 hit. Like, Chuck should be able to float $100 at the spur of the moment, right?
I think so. And also, like, there have been other times when Chuck has had to, like, spend money for CIA purposes. So I feel like at this point, he shouldn't be asking that question.
Because, I mean, if Chuck's working off of his buy more salary, I get that $100 is a lot and you wouldn't want to spend that. But they gave him, the CIA gave him all that money in Chuck versus the Ring. But then he blew it all in that wedding. I don't know what Chuck's financial situation is. Anyhow, once in the spa, Chuck checks the men's locker room, but it's empty, which I guess is both a bad and a good thing. Shaw tells Chuck to check the steam room, so Chuck has to change out of his suit and into a towel. Shaw tells Chuck to wait for a moment until the steam clears. As he says this, Sarah joins Shaw and Castle, and Shaw asks what...
She got there so fast.
Very fast. Shaw asks what happened back there, and Sarah says that it wasn't Chuck's fault. Things just don't always go as planned. As the steam clears, we see that Chuck is joined in the steam room by 3 intimidating-looking men who happen to be Anatoly and his muscle. Shaw ascertains that the mole hasn't arrived yet. The clerk from the front desk enters the steam room and asks for one Ivan Drago, which is Anatoly's cover name, which also Chuck thinks is stupid because it's a name from Rocky IV. Anatoly reads the note and says, that the clerk gives him, and says that the mole is concerned about being followed, so he asks them to come meet him in his room. Anatoly throws the note on the floor, and he and his men exit as Chuck watches them leave. But Chuck is a jumpy guy and reaches for the discarded note before the guys leave completely. And the henchmen see him and ask why Chuck is so quick to pick up trash on the floor of a steam room, which I guess is a valid question, but Chuck says that he's just doing his part to keep it green. Yeah, that's right, Chuck, keep it green. But the henchman is not having this and enters a fighting stance, which causes Chuck to flash on Kung Fu and An intense fight ensues, and it is certainly one of the top 5 most intense steam room fight scenes I've seen in a long time.
My question is, like, the guys, I mean, I guess maybe the little piece of paper had, like, more information, but, like, they said what it said.
Oh, yeah,
like,
I know.
I read it out loud. I don't know why Chuck needed it.
I thought that it was going to have the room number.
Like the room number?
Right,
Yeah.
but we find out in a second and it didn't. So once he's out of the steam room, Chuck reads the note, and as we're saying, it just says, like, meet me in my hotel room. It doesn't give a number at all. Apparently, he just didn't hear Anatoly in the steam room. Chuck doesn't have time to change back into his suit, so he, like, only wearing a towel and his glasses, he decides to sneak up to the upper floors of the hotel. He follows a housekeeper to an empty room, and I think this is pretty clever. He sneaks into the bathroom and then immediately exits as if he was taking a shower in that hotel room, surprising the housekeeper and making the housekeeper leave, thinking that the room is occupied.
Yeah. I mean, I felt kind of bad for her because it probably scared her.
Yeah,
but
she seemed pretty scared, but I think this is a good spy move.
Yeah, it's pretty smart.
Once he's alone, Chuck walks into the balcony and starts to climb along the wall to get to the room next door, which happens to be the mole's room. I guess Chuck knew the room number this whole time. And I was really hoping that we were going to get to see the honeymooning couple from season 2 again.
Oh, that would have been amazing.
Also, I guess rock climbing is not in the intersect because it seems like Chuck is just on his own here. I would have imagined that he could flash on, like, the scaling rocks or climbing.
Rappelling? What is it called?
Free Solo. That's a movie, right?
That's a movie, yes.
I keep thinking that it's about Han Solo. I get Han Solo, a Star Wars story, and Free Solo mixed up all the time.
Yeah, well, like, it's kind of like when Han Solo is, like, trapped, like, you want to free him.
Right. He does get freed a couple of times in that movie.
Yeah.
Aside from complaining that he wishes he was wearing underpants, and he almost slips a couple times, but Chuck sneaks his head into the balcony in the next door room where we see Anatoly speaking to another man. It happens to be the man from the opening sequence. They must be the mole. This man tells Anatoly that he's going to start dealing with the ring directly and no longer requires Anatoly's services. And then he stabs Anatoly in the stomach, killing him instantly. Chuck tells Shaw that the mole killed Anatoly, and Shaw says, "Forget Anatoly, we've got to get a look at the mole's face." You've got to give Chuck credit here because he decides to imitate a bird call from the balcony ledge.
It was very weird.
It was very weird, very spur of the moment, but he does a good job, and it makes the mole approach the balcony, just giving Chuck a better look at his face. He sees him, and Chuck's glasses scan the face, and Castle is able to identify the mole as a CIA operative known as Hunter Perry. Shaw and Sarah are satisfied, and Shaw says, "Way to go." Chuck, excited, says, "I'm a spy." And then his towel blows off in the wind, causing him to say, "I am a naked spy."
I had some questions about the mole, like, being so interested in this weird bird call that he would, like, go closer to the window. But then I kind of thought that since being quarantined, anytime a bird makes a sound outside, I'll just go look. Sometimes I've gotten very good at mourning dove sounds. I could just, like, make those because I'm trying to talk to the birds. So...
Well, you can't just introduce that and not do a mourning dove sound. So can we hear your mourning dove sound?
Ooh. There you go.
All right.
That's my mourning dove
sound. That's pretty good. Back in Chuck, I for one am glad that everything has been resolved in such a clean, successful manner.
Yeah, great.
So early in this episode too. It's great. Chuck's a spy. Everyone's fine. We cut to a commercial, and when we return, we see the exterior of a bustling Subway restaurant.
Which might be another commercial. I read one of the AV Club reviewers said that they almost fast-forwarded through this part as well because they thought it was a Subway commercial. Which, I mean, I guess it is, sort of.
It is, in some ways. Big Mike enters wearing a fine suit, and to our surprise, Casey enters the Subway behind him wearing his own Big Mike-inspired fine suit.
It's looking good.
Casey asks what they're doing in a Subway, and Big Mike says that Jeff and Lester are here getting lunch, and they agree to drop the threat of a lawsuit if Casey can prove to them that, quote, John Crazy is no more. They call Casey John Crazy.
I feel like they could have done better than that.
I think it's pretty good. It's pretty clever.
All right, sure.
Big Mike says to Casey, "You look cool. Can you be cool?" The four men, Jeff, Lester, Big Mike, and Casey, sit down at the table. Casey begins to apologize for roughing up Jeff and Lester the other day. When a Subway employee named Lisa delivers 2 sandwiches to the table, Lester says that Lisa needs payment for the 2 sandwiches and looks at Casey. Casey says that he didn't order the sandwiches, and Jeff says, "No, I did." and then proceeds to scrape the tuna fish out of a tuna fish sandwich, and he puts the tuna into a pepperoni sandwich. Casey is disgusted by this.
I have some questions here. First of all, Subway doesn't work that way. You order at the counter. It's not like a table service restaurant, I don't think. Second of all, I feel like if Jeff had asked, the Subway employee would have just done that for him. Like, if he said, I want tuna with pepperoni on it, they'd be like, I don't give a fuck, sure.
Well, I know, you know how some people are. You may just want to do it yourself. You might feel more comfortable.
That's true, but now he has all this extra, like, tuna-ish bread. Like,
I'm sure
gross.
he'll eat it later. I'm sure he can have a snack.
That's fair. Okay, sure. All right, go on.
Just as Erin is disgusted about this, Casey is disgusted by this as well. And Lester says that apologies are about more than just words, and oftentimes they're about money, which is what this is. Lester and Jeff want Casey to pay for the sandwiches. Casey smiles and takes out his wallet and hands Lisa, the Subway employee, a 20, and Lester tells Lisa to keep the change. Big Mike warns Lester that he's pushing it, but Lester says that he needs some kind of reassurance that John Crazy isn't going to return later. Casey promises that he won't bang up Jeff and Lester anymore, and Big Mike asks if they're cool and if they will drop the lawsuit, to which Lester responds that they're cool, but only if they seal their new understanding in a time-tested way of breaking bread together. So I thought they were going to get a warm, fresh loaf from Subway's bread oven, but apparently Lester and Jeff want Casey to bite into Jeff's half-eaten tuna-roni sandwich. Granted, Casey is the same guy that had Chuck remove his tooth to maintain their cover in Chuck vs. the Fake Name, so Casey easily takes a bite out of Jeff's sandwich. Perhaps for the first time, Casey don't give a shit.
I want to be clear about the tuna-roni. I don't really think that sounds that gross. Like, I don't eat tuna or pepperoni, but I don't, I feel like people like both of those things, and combining them doesn't sound that weird.
Elsewhere at the Orange, Chuck enters with a spring in his step and asks Sarah, who is cleaning the counter, when he can expect his International Spy Union card. Sarah says that he did a great job the previous night at the spa and asks Chuck if he would be free for dinner that night. She asks him if he wants to go to the restaurant Tracks, which is located in Union Station. Chuck agrees right away, and Sarah tells him not to be too excited. Chuck says that he's as cool as ice because he's a real spy, and then exits the Orange while pumping his fist like a train conductor and honking. Choo-choo!
Choo-choo!
At the Buy More, Big Mike tells Casey that he made him proud. Casey says that it feels good not to be so wound up all the time, and Big Mike says, Subway can soothe the tummy and the soul. Chuck approaches and asks what's going on, and Big Mike says that Casey is a changed man. Once Big Mike leaves, Chuck tells Casey that he is also a changed man. He confides in Casey that he passed his first solo spy test. Casey questions this, but Chuck says that he's passed with flying colors and wanted to give Casey a thank you present for all his help. Chuck hands Casey a box and says, I don't think Castle will miss it. Casey opens the box and it's a handgun. Not that it needs to be wrapped in anything. I don't even think there's tissue paper in the box. It's just a gift box with a gun in it. Typically this would make Casey happy, but he pulls Chuck aside and asks him if he knows that it's a felony to steal a weapon from the federal government. Chuck is unfazed, and Casey says that it was a very thoughtful felony and holds on to the package. Chuck is unconcerned as he says that everything is going so well. Chuck explains that he's going to dinner with Sarah that night, and Casey asks Chuck if he's certain that he's completed his mission. Chuck says that he is, and Casey tells him just to be careful out there and to be ready for anything. Chuck exits casually, and Casey watches him leave somewhat concerned. We then get another declassified scene. Let's check in with Devin, see what's going on.
I was wondering.
Chuck returns to his apartment and finds Devin practicing yoga in the courtyard. Devin is clearly in the zone, but then Chuck yells at him and says, Hey, sorry to interrupt. And Devin says, You and John are really bent on messing with my chi. Chuck apologizes and says that he didn't know there was chi to be messed with. Chuck says he just wanted to give Devin the good news that Devin won't have to be worried about Chuck's spy life anymore. Devin asks Chuck what that means, and Chuck says that he's got a promotion and explains that he's going to be moving up and out, and soon he will be far away from Ellie and Devin, and Devin won't have to worry about being in harm's way. Devin gives Chuck a hug and says that they'll miss Chuck, but it's for the best. Chuck then says that he thinks that he and Sarah might get back together too. Devin is happy and gives Chuck a double fist bump, one for the job and one for the girl.
I like that because I feel like in the next episode, I think that there's a lot of chatter between Devin and Ellie about how Chuck is leaving, and I didn't know exactly how they knew that. So this makes sense as explaining that Chuck had explained himself to Devin.
Yes, but not to Ellie, and I will be getting to that in a moment.
Oh, great. Okay. Exciting.
Not in a moment, but a little bit later. In Castle, Sarah and Shaw are talking, and Shaw says that he's going to have Perry the Mole meet Chuck at Union Station that night. Sarah asks if Shaw wants Chuck to arrest him, but Shaw says no. He wants Chuck to kill Perry for Chuck's red test. Red test is like when you kill someone as a spy for the first time. Sarah says that she doesn't want to be a part of it, and Shaw will have to go with Chuck instead. Sarah says that she doesn't even know if she wants Chuck to be able to kill, but Shaw insists that Chuck needs to be able to kill in order to be a spy. Sarah points out that Perry could kill Chuck if Chuck hesitates, and Shaw reminds her that that's why she'll be there to protect Chuck if things go south. Shaw says that if Sarah tells Chuck to kill Perry, Chuck will do it. And I don't know, I feel like this scene probably took place before Chuck and Sarah talked in the Orange.
Do you think so?
Well, because it's just like Chuck's all excited about going to dinner with Sarah, but she's like, don't be too excited. Like, she clearly is withholding information, and it seems like she's withholding this.
I assumed that she knew that the test wasn't over, but not that she knew that the test was Chuck killing. Like, I assumed she thought he was just going to have to arrest him.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know.
That was my assumption.
It seemed pretty loaded. It seemed a little bit heavier than... It seemed like Sarah knew what was going to happen, but...
That's fair.
I don't know.
Maybe she suspects.
Later that evening, Chuck arrives at Union Station and finds Sarah sitting at a table by herself. She's wearing very fancy clothes. Chuck sits down and compliments her, and Chuck is just beaming. He's so happy. Chuck apologizes if he came across too strong the night before on the stakeout, but he just wanted to let her know how he felt with everything that's going on between her and Shaw. But then Chuck realizes that he needs to thank Sarah for her help, but Sarah asks him not to say that and then tells him that he needs to just stay calm. Chuck asks if Sarah has a surprise for him, and Sarah says that it's something like that. Sarah then hands Chuck another blue envelope like the one before and says, "Your mission isn't over, Chuck."
The envelope has a picture of Perry in it. Sarah says that Perry has killed countless civilians and agents, and he's continuing to put the nation at risk by working for the Ring, which is why Chuck has to kill him. Dun, dun, dun. Ooh. That was my dove sound again.
Someone let a dove into Union Station.
Yeah, sorry. It happens. Sarah hands Chuck a gun wrapped in a napkin. Everybody's just giving people guns in weird packages this episode.
Welcome to America. Sorry, didn't mean to have such scathing political satire.
Oh, that's okay.
Should have given you a trigger warning. Oh, it was a pun. Okay, everything's good now. Continue.
That's your TED Talk. Chuck is flabbergasted by this and says he can't kill someone. Sarah says it's the only way he can become a real spy, and Chuck deduces from this that it's the only way in which they'll be able to be together. That being said, Sarah doesn't really seem to want Chuck to kill Perry. She says it's his decision, but if he doesn't do it, he'll just go back to being Chuck, which isn't a bad thing. Chuck doesn't know what to do, but it's time for Sarah to bounce, so she leaves right as Perry arrives. Chuck frantically hides the gun, while Perry comes over to Chuck's table, saying he hopes their meeting doesn't last too long. He's like coming in pretty hot here.
Yeah, what does he think that they're doing there? It's not really clear why, like, what Perry thinks that he's doing with Chuck, why they're talking.
Yeah, I don't know. Chuck says he wants to show Perry some photos, and Perry says he'll be happy to look, but he needs to use the restroom first, which is like, I don't know. I guess maybe he was just like, yeah, I'm just going to go say hi. Like, I mean, I think what's happening here is that he suspects that Chuck is onto him, and he's going to go, like, hide in the restroom and, like, whatever, but I feel like in a real situation, if you walked up to somebody and, like, immediately sat down, like, you sat down with them and then you were immediately like, actually, I have to go to the bathroom, and then you left. I mean, I don't know. You have stomach issues. What do you think about this?
Like, if I was on my way to a meeting and I just stopped into my local Subway to eat a sandwich, and then by the time I got to the meeting, I was dying on the inside.
Yeah.
I don't think it's too crazy. I mean, I probably wouldn't sit down at the table. I'd probably, like, come up to the table and be like, hey, I'm actually just going to run to the restroom real quick. I'll be right back.
Yeah, or you could just go to the restroom and then go to the table. Like, unless you think you're going to be there for a long time, I feel like you can just pop in.
Unless you want to be punctual if you're trying to meet there at a certain time.
That's fair. Okay, sure. So Chuck's too morally compromised to see that this is probably Perry's escape attempt, but Sarah is looking on from the waiting area, and she sees that Perry gets up, and then Chuck follows him. Chuck draws his gun and follows Perry into the men's room, which is otherwise unoccupied, even though this is like a crowded train station. Chuck starts kicking open all the bathroom doors to prove that they're unoccupied, and when he gets to the last one, Perry bursts out with a knife. The video goes all slow-mo to the point where I, like, thought something was wrong with my TV.
Oh, same.
But, yeah. Chuck gets slashed in the leg, and then he flashes in the head and starts fighting Perry. He ultimately disarms Perry and pulls his gun. Perry tries to plead with Chuck and get in Chuck's head by saying that if Chuck kills him, he'll be just like the Ring, which Chuck buys into even if I don't. Chuck says he'll arrest Perry instead and leads him out of the bathroom with the gun to his back. As Sarah looks on, though, Perry makes a break for it into the rail yard, and we get the scene from the beginning, although now we know that Sarah is here too, moving between the trains with her own gun out. Perry falls and pleads with Chuck, just like at the beginning. Chuck starts to ease up on the trigger, and we see that Perry is drawing his own gun, but then there's a gunshot and Perry falls down dead. Chuck didn't fire, so he looks around to see who did, and it's Casey, with the gun Chuck gave him. Sarah runs out and sees Chuck standing over the body, and she's distraught. Shaw calls her to ask what happened, and she says Chuck is a spy. Back at their apartment, Chuck points out to Casey that he technically failed his spy test. Casey points out in turn that Chuck can't tell anyone Casey pulled the trigger because Casey is a civilian now, and what he did was murder. Chuck starts having an identity crisis because he's a spy, but not really a spy. Casey tells him he's not a killer, and Chuck says thanks, which I thought was kind of nice.
What's Devin doing this episode? Let's find out. We have the final declassified scene of the episode.
I figured.
As Casey watches Chuck enter his apartment, Devin exits his apartment and asks Casey if he's heard the good news. Chuck is moving far away, which means Devin and Ellie will be able to return to their normal lives and that Devin can stop meditating. Casey says that things have changed, but they've only gotten more complicated. Devin is incredulous and says that he can't take this anymore. He says that it feels like it's never going to end, and Casey says that it won't. Devin asks Casey what he means, and Casey says that Devin and Ellie need to get out of Los Angeles. If Devin wants out of the spy world, he and Ellie need to just disappear. Casey says that he knows Devin doesn't want to hear that and apologizes for the rough news, but then says that when Devin is ready to disappear, he'll help him do it.
So this explains so much of the next episode, and I don't know why they cut it or why they didn't put it in the next episode.
I feel like they used there's a lot of action sequences in this one, more action sequences than normal, and there's the chase scene, so all of that is just time that they would have to use. I feel like they would have to cut out the Devin stuff to allow for those more, which
I mean, that's
I
fair.
thought was a good choice. I agree with the decision.
Yeah. I don't know what Casey is talking about, though. Like, why are they unsafe? Like, if Chuck is gone, like, why do they need to disappear? Why now? I don't know.
Well, because it's like, I don't know, it's the same thing with, like, superheroes, and, like, when someone finds your secret identity or they find your loved ones, then they can get them. Like, if Chuck's in Rome and someone finds out, like, who's this guy, and they found, like, oh, he has a sister and a brother-in-law in Burbank.
Yeah, okay, I guess that's fair. Chuck, meanwhile, goes into his own apartment to call Sarah. She doesn't pick up, but he finds another envelope on his table, and it has another portable DVD player, as well as an ID and a gun. I point out here, the government must be going through so many portable DVD players if they just keep sending them and then blowing them up.
I know.
That's crazy.
It's very unsustainable. It's not cool that they're just blowing up electronics like that.
Beckman says that she sent Chuck a plane ticket to DC for his final induction, and it leaves that night. Chuck tries to call Sarah again, but she declines his call. We see her talking to Shaw about how she didn't think Chuck would really kill someone. Shaw asks if she's still in love with him, and she says not anymore. She tells him about her own red test, where she was asked to kill a woman with nothing more than a photo. She says it was the worst day of her life. Meanwhile, Chuck gets a knock on his door. He thinks it's going to be Sarah, but it's an agent there to bring him to the airport. Now he's a real spy. The end.
The end, and that is Chuck versus the final exam. Did he pass, or did he cheat? Sounds like he cheated a little bit. Casey helped him cheat. Yeah, cheating is bad, kids. It's very bad. Don't do it. I mean, I guess maybe there's some circumstances in which it's like, it's okay. I don't know. Maybe it's morally, maybe there's like gray areas, but generally cheating on your exams, not as good. Not that good. Pretty heavy end to an episode. Lots of action. Sarah's very upset. Chuck is a spy, but not really. Casey is offering to help Devin disappear completely. Yeah, well, I didn't see that, but that makes sense. But I saw it. Shaw, Sarah says that she's not in love with Chuck anymore, which means that she was. Yeah. Sarah had a red test crazy. That we got to see. Killed this woman who she thought was innocent. I have a sad thing to note here. Sure. Apparently, I've only seen one episode after this so far, so I can't say for sure that this is true, but according to Wikipedia, this is the last episode in which we see the orange, and also the last episode in which we see Sarah in her orange uniform. Really? So that's pretty crazy. That is crazy. It is. I don't know if it means in the season or in the series. I guess we'll have to see. Because I know Castle continues to exist, but I don't remember if the orange does or not. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I kind of feel like it's the end of an era with that, just like
Yeah.
the end of Chuck's spy missions.
Yeah.
Well,
Can we have like a quick conversation about like some the AV Club review that I read pointed this out, but I also like I was thinking it like it's kind of a weird double standard. Like I know like Chuck is kind of like the audience surrogate and who we relate to and like his innocence is part of his character, but
mhm,
also like I guess I get like what the characters of like Casey and Sarah are thinking, like sort of, but I feel like I don't know. I feel like when I first watched this, I absolutely bought into the fact that like, oh, if Chuck had killed someone, he would be morally compromised and he wouldn't be the same person, and I was on Sarah's side why you wouldn't love someone who had killed someone. But also, like, we as the audience still love Sarah and Casey, and we see them kill people like multiple times,
right.
and we know that they've killed like dozens and dozens of people. Like, so again, I kind of get where Sarah is coming from, but it's also like it's very weird, and it's a very like weird perspective on a show about spies and like how like they can't. I don't know. It's kind of weird.
Because then it's also like Sarah is drawn towards Shaw, but Shaw presumably has also had that kind of
Yeah,
violent past, and
yeah,
it is a weird thing because it's like, well, you're fine with Shaw killing people presumably, or maybe you're
yeah,
not, but like maybe she's not cool with any of it, and she's just doing it because she has to, and she doesn't.
yeah,
Chuck doesn't have to, so he shouldn't.
yeah. I think the Shaw thing, like, I think that Sarah's motivations here, like, sort of, like, they're complicated, but they make sense. But I don't know the show's feelings about, like, death and murder and whether it's okay or not, and whether it's okay for Chuck to do it. And, like, I. I don't know. I don't remember if Chuck ever kills anyone or if he gets out of the spy business with his like morality intact, but I just think it's interesting that we have so many characters who do like kill people on the regular and like it's just this one instance in which it's portrayed as so bad.
Hmm. Well, I know two people who kill things on the regular, and it's you and I in our segment Chuck, Marry, Kill, where we pick one part of this episode that we'd like to marry and one part of this episode that we'd like to kill.
So my Mary, it's a short one, but I loved when Big Mike was first reprimanding Casey, and he said, "You can't be conking heads in the Bymore. It's the Bymore." I just like I really laughed at that line, just like the delivery and also the line in general. You can't be conking heads in the Bymore.
You can't. It's just too much. You can't
It's
do
not
it.
done.
You can get away with a lot of shit in the Buy More, but you just
Yeah,
can't go
but
around
not that.
conking heads.
No.
My Mary is also, I guess, the Big Mike B plot. I really enjoyed the subway scene. I enjoyed Big Mike just trying to help Casey be cool, and I felt like the subway scene was this kind of quirky, weird moment that we really don't see often in the series. Like as I was watching it, I was like, I don't even feel like I'm watching Chuck at this point. It just feels so bizarre.
Like a sketch show.
Yeah, I appreciated how it gave Adam Baldwin a chance to explore different sides of Casey, like apologetic and
Mm-hmm.
like trying to navigate civilian life.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, I guess as a subway sleeper agent, I experience a deep sense of comfort by entering a subway, which is typically followed by a deep sense of urgent discomfort. However, it was a fun, memorable scene. Although I was wondering, were you thinking, because in the opening scene, when, or not in the opening scene, but the scene where Big Mike has the tailor, and
Mm-hmm.
he says that Big Mike has lost weight,
Mm-hmm.
and Big Mike is holding a Subway sandwich. Were you
Yeah, I
thinking,
did. Okay, I did think there was going to be like a Jared from
yeah,
Subway kind of moment.
or he's gonna be like, I've lost weight because I'm eating Subway sandwiches all the time?
I'm glad. In retrospect, I'm glad that didn't happen, but I did think that it was going to go
That
there.
must have been there, ideally without a Jared reference, but or I guess he who must not be named.
Yeah, sorry. So for my kill, I am dubious in some ways about like the death stuff that I was just mentioning, like the double standard. That
Mhm.
seems a little weird to me. But my main kill is I get the Mission Impossible reference, but I feel like, and also I know this was like in the past, so maybe it was not like portable DVD players were like a little bit cooler at this time, like as we've established. But I feel like they could have had some cooler tech than just like Beckman is on a DVD and then it blows up. Like it could have been anything that blows up if they want the Mission Impossible reference. But I thought it would have been cooler if they had like, I don't know, like could they even comprehend iPads at this point? Like they have had like, I don't know. I just thought they could have had something cooler than like a portable DVD player because first of all, that's kind of dated like at this point, and second of all, like we haven't seen a ton of cool spy tech this season, and it would have been cool to see, like, oh, they get their missions through this cool, like, glass thing, like Chuck puts on sunglasses and then Beckman's on them and says his mission or like something. And also it would have been more sustainable.
Yeah, it's kind of because they're like, this is how real spies get their missions. They're like, well, I mean, Casey and Sarah and Shaw get missions from Beckman in Castle on the TV all the time. And like in real time. So and does that mean Sarah and Casey and Shaw are constantly getting exploding DVD players that they're always disposing of?
I guess so.
Yeah, I don't know. For my kill, I think the declassified scenes actually shed some light on something and kind of helped me decide what my kill was going to be. Something didn't feel right during this episode, and then watching those declassified scenes made me realize that it is strange how on board Chuck is with potentially going to Rome by himself and leaving Ellie and Morgan behind. He has no reluctance at all. And there's you would think there would be some kind of separation anxiety. Morgan is not in this episode at all. He's at a conference. Chuck doesn't see him. Ellie also not in this episode at all. Devin originally was not in this episode. But it just, they're both out of sight and out of mind. And it just, Chuck is abundantly happy about going to Rome and getting to be with Sarah. And he doesn't seem burdened at all. It just seems very out of character for him at this point.
I think that's totally fair.
So now we move on to the Scooter scale, which I guess the Orange is joining the Wienerlicious and the junk heap of discarded to-go restaurants.
I know. We might have to come up with, I don't know, I think it will always have to be the Scooter scale, but we might need to honor the Orange occasionally. Yeah,
with some kind of froyo metric.
We'll talk about it after the episode is over.
How many corn dogs did you give this episode, Erin?
I'm gonna give it 4. I thought that it was a solid episode. I think that I did have problems with it. I completely agree with your kill, and I think that the emotional beats were good, but there were some like factual logistic things that didn't quite make sense with the double standard about death, with the actual mission, with what Sarah did and didn't know, all of those things. I think there were some points of confusion. But I think that it was overall a good episode. I think that all the performances were really good, and I think it is pretty interesting. Like I like that they found a way around, like, I think that it brings up some interesting identity crisis issues where, like, Chuck is a spy, but he actually didn't kill someone. I think this is a weird test logistically because, like, I feel like from what we've seen, like, Sarah and Casey have had to kill, like, dozens of people per episode, like, in some of these fights. So if your test is you just have to kill one person, like, I don't know. I feel like Chuck should have had to kill more people, is my point. Just make Chuck kill more people, and then I'll give you 5 corn dogs. But yeah, I thought it was a good episode. I didn't think it was perfect. So 4 corn dogs.
I'm a little bit more generous this time around. I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5. I really enjoyed this episode. Even though there is significant plot stuff happening in this, I feel like it was a nice reprieve from the 2 previous episodes, which were just so dense, I felt, and jam-packed with drama and that plot development. I think it had a little bit of a lighter tone at some parts with the subway stuff. Even the first half of the episode when things are going right, things are going good, things are okay, seemed like it was kind of nice. And then the end, when it turns into be more serious and dramatic, I thought that they handled it really well and it was believable. I really appreciated the twist of Casey shooting Perry and making it seem like Chuck did it. I feel like that's just some really good drama that is really just clever and smart, and we don't always see that on Chuck. And I was feeling these sparks between Chuck and Sarah, which was really great, and I hope that they could get back together, but obviously they didn't in this episode, and that's fine.
Not in this one.
But very solid. Very solid.
I'd like to pay a quick visit to our friends at the IMDb plot keywords page, because my 2 favorites are, there are 2 keywords that are right next to each other in this list. There's 15 total, but I'm just going to point out these 2. On the left side of the column is public nudity, and on the right side of the column is Subway restaurant. So, there you go. I just liked the juxtaposition of those 2 things.
Need we say more?
So, that's Chuck versus the final exam. Do you think we passed? Do you want to give us a grade?
Yeah, listeners, if you think we passed this episode, I don't know when grades are coming out, but feel free to tweet at us.
Drop us a review. Write us a review and let us know if we passed. But I mean, if you think we didn't pass, maybe don't write the review. You can tweet at us, but don't bring our rating down. Would be nice. But if you think we did pass, you can give us 5 stars.
Hooray!
Or however many stars you want, but like probably 5 would be nice.
Erin is really protective of our perfect 5-star rating, which
yes.
Now that we're talking about
from one person,
will absolutely bring down the score. But that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope we passed. I feel like we passed.
Yeah, I think I'm feeling pretty good about our score.
Well, one thing that I want to say before signing off is that there was one viewer of the show who feels that the show did not pass in one regard. They wrote a user review on IMDb that I would like to share with everyone.
Okay.
I don't have the user's name, but this is a user review that is actually a factual error, is where it's listed under IMDb. Quote, Subway is a national chain, and all their stores operate the same. When you enter, you are at the bread end of the assembly line. They build your sandwich/wrap to your specifications. Once it's made and wrapped in wax paper, the person at the cash register asks if you would like drinks, chips, or any extras to go with your sandwich or wrap. Then they take your money. They do deliver it to your table in some stores, but they do not ask you to pay at the table.
So that's what I said.
I'm going to leave you with that. This has been Chris Gillespie letting you know that food is sexy.
And this is Erin Arata. That's given me a lot to think about, but I'm letting you know that anything is possible.
Except for Subway asking for payment at the table. That will not happen.
Never happen, ever.
No.
Absolutely not.
And on our way out, I'm going to play a random assortment of the Morning Zoo radio sound effects that we had earlier. Here they are. Enjoy. All right. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. Crazy Chris signing off. Pew, pew, pew.
Raging Rapid Rivers, Erin Arata.
Thanks for listening. As always, a big thanks to the artist Hatakoa and the fine folks at freemusicarchive.org for providing us with our theme song, Warm Up. If you want to drop us a line, you can reach us at GoChuckYourselfPodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Go Chuck Yourself on your preferred podcast platform. New episodes come out every Monday morning, and you do not want to miss a new episode. Thanks again. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.